The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, is finally out. It has finally been released. The first 2 episodes are available, and oh boy, I was not expecting it to be this difficult to get through. It would be one thing if this show was woke trash, action-packed, and basically had no real storyline. However, this show is just straight up boring, and we're gonna have to go over the many problems that even I wasn't expecting with this series, and why it's absolutely terrible. On top of that, we have a scene in the show. It's that scene. We're gonna break it down because it's absolutely amazing, and it shows that the writers have absolutely no discipline, and unlike what they think about the general public, it is them that cannot handle diversity in their stories, not the general public. But before we get into that, friendly reminder, this show is available in audio form on Spotify and Apple's podcasting platform, and we have a great sponsor, long-term sponsor of this channel, so I'm gonna throw it over to them, and then we're gonna bring it back over here on the other side. Have you ever wondered why you lose that youthful glow over time? Well, it turns out a big factor in the aging equation is collagen, or to be more accurate, the fact that your body produces 10% less collagen each and every decade, and thus you don't have that glue that binds your skin together, making it look young. So what do you do about this? I recommend supplementing with Health with Justice, and the reason I recommend this collagen powder is unlike the other ones that you'll find over the store is that this one contains about 5 different types of collagen, and it comes with the 60-day money-back guarantee. On top of that, if you go to healthwithjustice.com, guess what? It's 51% off. 51% off, 5 different types of collagen, and a 60-day money-back guarantee. You can't beat that deal. Take it once a day. Restore the youthful glow in your skin. So there are 2 episodes out at the time of me recording this video, and I think it is okay, it is acceptable to diagnose the Rings of Power for what it is, which is boring, a slog to get through, and not very interesting. And I know some people out there are going to say, well, I like something that's a little bit more slow paced, I like something that is building up towards a big event in the future, but in reality, in actuality, that is not the case, and I do agree with that in general, which is one of the reasons why I actually enjoyed the first 3 episodes of House of the Dragon. However, this is not what is going on in this series. It just meanders over and over again, showing off what they can generate via the computer in terms of beautiful views and beautifully rendered images, and nothing really of substance or nothing really interesting occurs throughout the course of the series. And one of the biggest problems that is plaguing this series is the fact that the characters are uninteresting. They're not entertaining. They're not fun to watch. And chief among them is my girl, Galadriel.
I've seen a lot of talking about my girl Galadriel.
Yeah,
So this character is exactly what you've expected from the trailers to the T, if not significantly worse than what you expected based on how they were talking about her and how they were showing her off. She basically operates with one expression. She never changes this face throughout the course of the series. She's that character that I'm a girl boss, I'm definitely 100% cool and right and correct all the time, and all these stupid cowardly men are all around me, but I'm a girl and a girl boss and I can fight off everything kind of character. She's not interesting to watch. The way they introduce her was not very fun. They showed us a clip of her as a child, and she makes a boat, and then the boys throw the rocks at the boat because boys are mean and patriarchy. Smash the patriarchy, girl boss against the patriarchy. You all understand where I'm going with this. And overall, she's just the worst aspect of the show, which is a big problem because she's the main character in the show. There's a great scene early on that really exemplifies one of the problems in this series, and that is when they fight off an ice troll. And just so you guys know, Galadriel is teamed up with a unit of elves that are all male. She's the commander of those elves, and when the ice troll comes up to fight them, all of the elves are useless, but Galadriel is like no look stabbing, just showing you what a girl boss she actually is. Now, people have compared and contrasted this to the scene of the Fellowship of the Ring actually fighting off a troll in the Peter Jackson movies, and how that scene was really tense because it took all of their efforts, despite the fact that one of their members was an elf, and a high-ranking elf, and a very talented fighter as an elf. They all were on the brink of getting killed or getting hurt, and you could actually see the panic in their face. This allows us to assess the threats, understand that they are legitimate threats, and relate to our characters, because if a giant 25-foot troll came after us in the middle of a cave, we would likely be scared, so we connect with the main characters when they're actually scared of that, and it shows us that our characters are vulnerable, that they're not the Terminator, that they're not invincible, that they're not a Kryptonian, but this is what they end up showing us in this series because they don't understand character development or creating intrigue or actually creating peril so that we can worry about the safety of our character. I legitimately thought this scene was actually a joke because this troll throws a block of ice and takes out about 4 elves, and then the other elves don't even try to fight the troll. They just hold out their swords like they're stairs so Galadriel can jump up the sword stairs and then attack the troll. I thought we were well past making these stupid action scenes in the movies and in shows, but here we are with these scenes. And it just doesn't make any sense, because if elves are these strong fighters, like they've been shown to us to be strong fighters, not only in the epilogue of this series, but also in the other Lord of the Rings movies, it would seem ridiculous that Galadriel's elite unit of elves is completely useless and completely inept in fighting. But again, they were just trying to put down all of these male characters in order to boost Galadriel up, but what that ultimately ends up doing is making her unrelatable and making us think that she's not in peril, so we don't even get concerned over her, because look at the way she took out that troll. Are we really going to be afraid of her when she's fighting other people? Now, Galadriel is clearly the main character of this show, bar none, but that doesn't mean they don't cut to other portions of the story, other portions of the world, in order to give you the impression that this is a whole cohesive world and things are going on. However, unfortunately for them, when they cut to the B stories, they're not more interesting. In fact, in a lot of ways, they're even more cringe, like the Harfoot stories. A basic rule of storytelling for me is that I don't like little kids. I don't want to see little kids in movies or in shows unless the little kids are really good at acting. Stranger Things season 1, great example of these kids nailing it and really making the whole piece work. I've recently watched Black Phone, which I thought was quite interesting. It had a little kid actor and a bunch of kid actors in certain forms, which I don't want to spoil for you, and they were doing pretty good in the movie. It was watchable, it was passable, a-okay from me. The Hobbit kids, not in that category. The Hobbit kids, not interesting. And considering they're trying to use them to show us the wonderment of the world, like there's scenes where they see dudes hunting and they're like, oh my god, a man is there, a human. And then the old guy takes out his book and he's like, what else? The things are changing. Wow. And they're like looking up, they talk about destiny. And then I see the guy who in the trailer said our hearts are bigger than our feet. And I cringe every time I see him because I think, oh no, he's going to look in the camera and say that line. Let me play that line for you guys just so you could see that line.
One thing we can do, better than any creature in all Middle-earth, we stay true to each other with our hearts even bigger in our feet.
Everything about this storyline sucks. Nori sucks, and even worse than her is her friend. Not into it. I don't want to watch it. Stop cutting away from this. Also, it's a giant tonal shift when you cut from Galadriel gutting some troll in this vicious, nasty way, and her always looking pissed off and always looking annoyed and always talking down to people, to these little girls being like, wow, there's so much wonder in the world. No, wrong. Tonal shift. Totally awkward, totally weird. It is not blended well at all, and this is embarrassing, especially when you realize that Jeff Bezos wanted this to be like Game of Thrones, and Game of Thrones successfully would ping from location to location to give you interesting slices of the story. So we have the A story that's really boring, the B story that's really cringe, and then there's the C story, which, oh my god, if there was any proof at all that Hollywood studios can't handle diversity, it would be this story. Now look, we all know that there's a black elf in the show. We accept it at this point. We all know it's not accurate to Tolkien's writing. We all know that the elves were so white they were glowing in the books, in the original Jackson movies. We all understand that. That being said, if the show was interesting, if the show was compelling, then I would treat it as a good fan fiction. And if this character was really good, I would get into it. I would support it. I would be okay with it. I would understand that he's there for diversity reasons, but if he's nailing it, if he's knocking it out of the park, I wouldn't really care. A perfect example of this is Corlys Velaryon in House of the Dragon. His storyline is actually quite interesting, and one of the things that's most interesting about his storyline is that it's not about racism. It's not them talking about racism. It's not about the fact that he's black. In fact, Corlys Velaryon, because he's Valyrian in the show, actually thinks he's superior to the Westerosi, which is an interesting spin on a black character, and it shows that they're trying to keep true to the Valyrians kind of being these blood purity bad people, sort of. So I'm actually on board for that. On top of that, even though he makes proposals, even though he makes suggestions and other people disagree with him, it doesn't necessarily prove out that he's automatically right in the end. One of the cool things is that he wanted to go to war in the Stepstones because that negatively impacted him. However, the crown was not into it, and it's played up in the council meetings like the king is a dumb idiot, he might be a little weak, and then he ends up recruiting the king's brother in order to go on this mission. Then we get a smash cut to 3 years later, and it turns out they're in a disastrous failing campaign in the Stepstones, and they're begging the crown for help. So they're not auto-successful, they're not these great people, they're not perfect, they're flawed, and they actually fit in the universe, thus making the fact that they did a race swap for, according to the showrunners, diversity reasons, kind of irrelevant, because you got a good actor, he's nailing it, and the storyline fits within the show. Now, the reason I bring that up, the reason I set that up, the reason I discuss that at length, is so I don't have to make a separate video on House of the Dragon, but it's because the first scene with the first black elf that they were so proud to have is about racism, and it is horrible. I'm gonna play this for you so you can understand what's going on.
Soldier, well, my well is yours, as ever.
And the poisoning?
What poisoning?
The one we were just discussing.
No. It was but poisoned grass. He was twaddling about. A fellow passed through a few days back, said his grazing's gone rotten. There, only weeds will grow.
So I gotta give you a little bit of the background so you can know what's going on allegorically, and yes, I'm talking about allegory in Tolkien's world, and Tolkien hated direct one-to-one allegory, so already we're in a lot of trouble. So there was a war with the boss of Sauron. This happened before the events of the series that we see, it's touched on in a recap, whatever. These humans actually teamed up with the bad side during the course of that war, and that is somewhere in the timeline about 1,000 years ago or whatever. And like post-Civil War, the elves are acting as kind of like the Union soldiers in that they're occupying them during a form of reconstruction. So this creates a lot of animosity between the people and the elves. So you actually have it set up for a subtle Civil War allegory. However, remember, they decided to cast a black elf here, so therefore this has to be a blunt, obvious, in-your-face, cringy allegory for racism, and I just gotta play the setup for it.
This fellow, where was he from?
Didn't say east, I think.
And what day was he here?
Oh, let it go, knife ears. It's a bloody patch of grass. The lot you lump us in with died off 1,000 years ago. When are you people gonna let the past go?
To answer your question, yes, that was an actual scene in a Lord of the Rings show. That was actually written down by writers. It was vetted from first draft to all the way to completion. They then shot it. They then had the actors say the lines while they were shooting it, and they decided that they were going to leave it in the show. An angry white person in the first scene with the first black elf throws a racial slur at the elf and then says, "You people are too obsessed with the past. You people need to let the past go." Are you getting something? Are you getting some kind of message from this situation? Is something being communicated to you guys out there in the audience? Do you understand the significance of an angry white person telling the first black elf ever that he's obsessed with the past and he needs to let the past go and stop focusing on the past? I mean, did you ever think of the word slavery in this show? Also, he said, "You people." What we're seeing right now is angry white man telling black person to let go of slavery, or at least the allegorical version of slavery in this series, and this is what they did with the first black elf in his first scene in this TV series. This made it through the process.
When are you people gonna let the past go? You people.
Seriously, that's how on the nose this show decided to be right off the bat. That's what they wanted to do Immediately, once they realized we have a black elf in our series, we could take a shot at white people and call white people evil, white, and racist. Isn't this a great opportunity to show how bad white people are and how racist white people are, because white people are really bad and really racist? The only way that this could have been worse is if he would have called him Elfer, and then he would have been mad at him for using the hard R in Elfer. That's how cringy and embarrassing this scene was, and I saw it again on Twitter and I retweeted it, and it's just hilarious in every possible way. This is why people didn't want Amazon to handle Lord of the Rings. This is why they were not happy from what they were seeing in the marketing materials. This is the thing that people point to when they talk about diversity and how it can actually make a show worse. Picture perfect example, the writers couldn't help themselves, and again, this is just the first scene with them, so I'm assuming this will be with us throughout the course of the series. They can't do a House of the Dragon where anything related to that is implied, and actually it's a little bit of a head spin, because the guy's actually Valyrian. They can't do any of that. They're like, nope, we gotta do immediately blunt, having a human character say you people, using a racial epithet, and then talking about how black people, I mean elves, never let go of the past. Those darn elves never let go of what happened in the past.
You people gonna let the past go.
Another thing that you'll notice, by the way, is that Amazon actually requires at least 50% of speaking roles to go to women, not straights, or to minorities. So try watching this series and think about who's speaking and who's in the background over and over again, and try not to notice it now that I've told you that.
Is over.
You have not seen what I've seen.
I have seen my share.
You people gonna let the past go.
You have not seen what I have seen.
You people gonna let the past go.
Also, there's something else that's absolutely amazing about this show, and that is, this show can actually look incredibly expensive, like otherworldly expensive, and cheap at the same exact time. And what do I mean by that? Well, when they're panning out and showing you the establishing shots, they're showing you the environments and all that, you see where the money is. You see that they put a huge chunk of that money on screen. When you're looking at the costumes, some of them look very intricate, very detailed. Not all of them, but we'll get into that a little bit later in maybe another video. However, one of the things that you'll notice is that a lot of the dialogue is shot in close-up, shot, reverse shot with a blurred background. Now, for those of you who are not super film savvy, the cheapest way to shoot dialogue is via close-up. And this is because you only have to light for the face, and if you're blurring the background, you don't really need a lot of interesting stuff in the background. And also considering that a lot of this is in front of the green screen, you could actually just project the blurred background in post-production for relatively a little bit of money. So when I see a huge show, and it really doesn't have a lot of scenes with blocking, you know, actors moving around as they're talking, and it's just straight up shot, reverse shot, I'm really wondering where the money is in terms of shooting the dialogue. If you go look at House of the Dragon, HBO show, nowhere near the budget, but still a pretty high budget TV series, you can actually see there's blocking, there's intricate set design, the camera's actually being placed somewhere interesting a lot. They're not just doing establishing shot and then close up right on your face, so that way they don't have to render other things. Now, I don't know why this was chosen to be done this way. They have a way more money. You would think they would be able to shoot more elaborate dialogue, but considering the acting is wooden in a lot of places, especially with my girl Galadriel.
I've seen it, but a lot of talking about my girl Galadriel.
The fact is, when you have an actor that's clearly struggling with the material because you're telling her to be 100% stoic and emotionless 100% of the time, it doesn't really help when you're only using close-ups and we can't even see part of the story being told through the movement of the characters. So I found that really interesting to watch just from like an outsider point of view, having nothing to do with the story overall, but it definitely has an impact on the story. And it's one of the things that if you're watching a good movie, if you're watching an interesting movie, you should actually look for, because you'll see actors moving around as the conversations change. It's a normal thing that happens in storytelling. Like, they tell the story with their body, they tell the story with the cinematography. So the fact that everything is close-ups and really cringy close-ups, they don't even, a lot of them have push-ins or anything like that, is really troublesome in terms of the effort that they're putting in. It seems like they're like, we want to show you these great vistas that we cut for the trailers, but we're not actually going to shoot it intelligently. And again, if you just compare and contrast the lighting, the cinematography, how they shoot dialogue between this and House of the Dragon, and the acting and the development of the characters, you'll see that House of the Dragon is absolutely killing it. And by the way, you can see the impact of all of these factors coming into play with the reviews, and I'm talking about the audience reviews. And by the way, I just want to point out that a lot of people are like, the audience reviews are the true reviews. A lot of times that is not the case. A lot of times the general audience gets it wrong. Remember, Transformers made billions of dollars movie after movie, and those movies just aren't good. But there's always the backlash against negative fan reviews, especially when those negative fan reviews are so on point and they cut to the core of the issue. So you see people like John Idarola of the Young Turks calling everybody sexist and racist because they don't like the show, parroting what the entertainment access media is saying about it in this tweet. It has a woman wielding a sword and non-white cast members. Yes, in 2022, it is going to be review bombed by the weakest men in history. Now, of course, that's John Idarola showing how weak and cowardly he is. He can't address the criticisms, he can't combat people, he can't convince you to like the show, and as I pointed out on Twitter, the reviews are not coming in bad for House of the Dragon. In fact, the critic score for House of the Dragon is about 85% on Rotten Tomatoes, the fan score 84%, near parity between the two. By contrast, the critic score for Lord of the Rings Rings of Power, 84, the fan score, around 38. Both of these stories are female-centered and feature racially diverse casts that were specifically race-swapped into the show. The difference is House of the Dragon has better writing, it has better acting overall, and the main character is actually compelling. In fact, I talked about earlier when I was discussing House of the Dragon that the chick that plays Rhaenyra, or Rhaenys, honestly I forget, George R.R. Martin, with your very similar names, you're really bugging me, is actually significantly better than Emilia Clarke as an actress. Now, obviously, Emilia Clarke is a gorgeous woman, and that's probably why she was cast in the role of Daenerys Targaryen, and she was a big up-and-comer. She was cast in a bunch of other things, but the chick that they have now is a really good actress, so she really ropes you in. And the funny thing is that if you were to break down what House of the Dragon is based on, what it's supposed to be about, versus what the Rings of Power is supposed to be about, you would think that all these people who don't like feminist messaging, women power, or any of that would hate House of the Dragon and embrace the Rings of Power, because Rings of Power should be about the creation of the Rings of Power and how these organizations, or actually these subgroups of people or races, whatever you want to call them, the elves, the dwarves, the humans, actually got baited into taking the Rings of Power, and ultimately that led to their undoing when Sauron creates the ultimate Ring of Power. But what's actually going on is that people are embracing the show that's about a woman trying to ascend the Iron Throne in a society that does not respect female inheritance rights. The only reason Rhaenys is in danger of losing the throne throughout the course of the story is that people in Westeros prefer male inheritance, and they don't like the idea of being ruled by a queen. On top of that, this is meant to be a parallel story to what went on in the Game of Thrones series, which was covered in the book. So a lot of this is just rehashing the same material. It's just the writing is so much better in the House of the Dragon series that people are overlooking that. And by the way, a lot of people are saying, oh, well, there's been some girl power moments or whatever in House of the Dragon. So those people who do complain about everything do exist with House of the Dragon. But the thing is, that's what the story's supposed to be about over there. It's supposed to be about a woman being named to the Iron Throne, and then the king marries the Hand's daughter. And that produces a problem because a lot of the powerful houses in the realm assume that he's going to change the heir to his son, but ultimately he refuses to do so, and thus that leads to conflict within the Targaryen family. So it is all about not having female inheritance and a woman wanting what was offered to her by her father, in that he was able to name her the inheritor of the throne and all of that. So if that bothers you, if that upsets you, if you think that's on its own a woke story or whatever, then it's not for you, but that is what the story is supposed to be about. The female character that wants to break from tradition, that wants to break from the norms, is not a bad character on her own. But the character that's just a lady boss and 100% good at everything because she's a lady is cringe and what we don't like and what we would like to see significantly less of in Hollywood. It's like Arya Stark in the later seasons of Game of Thrones. She's just good at everything without explanation. And I know a lot of you are going to say she trained with the Faceless Men. No, she didn't. She washed bodies for years, then she killed the waif. Then Jack and Hagar was like, hey, we're gonna start your training. And then she was like, no, I'm Arya Stark, I'm out of here, didn't take the training. And guess what happened? She became Batman anyway, as if when she killed the waif, she absorbed all of her powers, like it was Highlander. Yes, I'm gonna reference a whole bunch of different forms of art in this sentence. So overall, Rings of Power sucks. It's not good. It does have that woke, cringy scene. It does have a lady boss, boring, bland, flat protagonist that delivers every single one of her lines in the same voice while making the same face. But the biggest sin of the show, by far and away, is not even the disrespecting of Tolkien's lore or anything like that. It's the fact that it's incredibly boring and not slow paced, not building to something, just straight up boring, just not interesting, not a good show. No bueno. I don't like it. But you know what? Entertainment is subjective. Maybe you love this show, and if you do, let me know your wrong opinions down in the comments below, because you're definitely wrong if you disagree with me on anything related to shows or movies. If you liked the video, show me by leaving a like. Subscribe for more content. Follow me on all my social media. Support me via the support links in the description of the video. This has been me talking about Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. Till next time.